In July 2002, over 250,000 people attended one of the world's greatest air shows. Farnborough 2002. The air show at Farnborough is held over 7 days, 5 for trade visitors and 2 for the public. Tighter security was in place after the September the 11th attacks, but this didn't seem to affect the smooth running of the show. The scale of the event was staggering. Over 110,000 square meters of exhibition space, with 100 aircraft on flying or static display. Although the exhibition stands were busy, the real entertaining was done in the corporate chalets on the hill. Here, clients were wined and dined, and huge deals were discussed, away from public view. At the weekend, 150,000 people poured onto the airfield to see a 5-hour flying display. There were no Sukhoi or MiG jets flying at the show, due to a dispute between a Swiss company, Noga, and the Russian government, which resulted in attempted seizures of Russian defense hardware. The Russians have a tradition of spectacular flying displays, but in their absence, it was left to the new Boeing FA-18 Super Hornet to amaze the crowds. The Super Hornet is a 21st century development of a classic fighter attack aircraft.
It's been in service for over 2 years now. It's the squadron that first stood up was a training unit, and the first operational squadron has now taken delivery of airplanes. Although it looks very similar to the F-18CD model, it is in many regards the next generation airplane. The systems inside of it are all updated. They are all next generation technology. And so this airplane is ready right now to carry the full complement of air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons, and in particular all of the smart weapons and how those smart weapons integrate with the rest of the airplane systems.
The Super Hornet display was designed with a specific purpose in mind.
All of the airshow maneuvers that you see in the show have been picked for their tactical relevance to the educated buyer and the military audience, and obviously the fighter pilots that would fly the airplane. What we try to show them are maneuvers that are purely tactical relevant, that separate this airplane from all the others. And for that reason, to the casual observer, you won't see us do a loop or a roll or even a 4-point hesitation roll or even an inverted pass for that matter. All of these maneuvers are picked because of their tactical relevance.
The Super Hornet comes in single and dual-seat versions and is designed for a variety of missions, including close air support, air superiority, and fighter escort. Its powerful General Electric engines give it incredible agility, as well as the ability to operate at high angles of attack. The US Navy have ordered over 500 Super Hornets, and the aircraft is being actively marketed in Europe, where some air forces already operate older versions of the Hornet. For many people, the Super Hornet display was the star of Farnborough, but it faced some stiff competition from other fighters at the show. Since the attacks on September the 11th, the airline industry has been struggling,
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, last autumn was a massive shock, and we were affected very severely because we have a huge amount of traffic, particularly across the North Atlantic. But we reacted very fast to it. We made some painful decisions, and it's looking reasonable going forward. Our traffic figures are looking good. We're gradually putting services back. We've announced additional services to New York and Washington recently. So quietly confident, but just keeping a very careful watching eye on what's going on with the markets.
As if to highlight the increasing optimism in the industry, European company Airbus proudly showed off the launch customer for its new A340-600 aircraft. Airbus had two brand new aircraft in the flying display, including the A318.
We're trying to hold production stable. Our competitor a few years ago was producing about 620 aircraft. Now they're plummeting to about 275 in 2003. A few years ago we were close to 300 aircraft. This year will be 300 aircraft. In 2003 will be 300 aircraft. And that's very good for production, and it's also pretty good for employment. We don't have to lay off 35,000 people.
The 107-seat A318 is the smallest member of the Airbus family. Its first flight was January 2002, and it will enter passenger service in mid-2003.
Well, we built airplanes from a clean sheet of paper. 32 years ago, in December of 1970, you could have gone to a conference room in Paris where the protocols to start Airbus industry were signed between the French and the Germans. Well, they had, in addition to a bottle of champagne, they had a lot of high hopes and a clean sheet of paper. You could have flown to that conference in a 747. You could have flown around Europe in a 737. Both were in revenue passenger service at that point in time. Our clean sheet of paper meant that we've got all new aircraft for the 21st century.
Within a few years, the British and the Spanish had joined the Airbus consortium. European cooperation was seen as the only way to compete with the giant US manufacturers. Airbus's first clean sheet design, the A300B, first took to the skies in October 1972. It would mark the beginning of the end for American dominance in the airliner marketplace. Today, the Airbus family is expanding rapidly. Part of the success is due to the cockpit design of the aircraft. Its multifunction displays have made pilot training a much quicker process.
If you are type rated on one of the Airbus, you can move on another type with a so-called CCQ, crew qualification, which is a short period of time transformation. For example, if you go from 340 to 330, you have 1 day training. If you had to change totally on another manufacturer aircraft, you would have to start a complete training, which takes 6 weeks.
The A340-500 was also in the flying display. This ultra-long-range, wide-bodied aircraft can fly 313 people over 8,000 nautical miles. But what does the display demonstrate?
What I try to show is to show to people that the aircraft is very safe. It means that you can, in the real life, you can have to do avoidance maneuvers, you can have to avoid terrain, to avoid another aircraft, to make tight maneuvers, and because of the flight envelope protections, because of the refined landing qualities, you can move such a big aircraft in a very tight volume in an entire safety.
The next member of the Airbus family due to enter service in 2006 is the revolutionary twin-deck A380, which will carry a massive 555 passengers.
Well, I like to call the A380 the green giant. It consumes less fuel than a 747-400, despite the fact that it's got more passengers, but it has a noise footprint that's half as noisy as a 747-400, despite the fact that it's got a third more passengers on board. Now that's environmental friendliness.
The A380's cabin will have unprecedented levels of space and comfort. There will also be other benefits to airlines.
Well, one of our perennial issues is the fact that we find it very difficult to grow at the airports in the UK, particularly at Heathrow, and therefore the A380 is strategically very important for us because we fly some very, very important markets from London, New York, Los Angeles, wherever, and without being able to get hold of more slots, one of the only ways to grow is bigger aircraft. So the 380 will be very, very important for us, and we're excited about that as well.
From a giant of the skies to a more modest regional aircraft, from Brazilian company Embraer.
It's a brand new aircraft. It's the 5th prototype of our new family, the Embraer 170-190 family.
There's been considerable growth in regional airlines during the last few years, and Embraer have considerable experience in that sector.
Well, we are specifically developing this airplane for this market, from 70 to 110 seat market. Today, in this range of the market, you only have stretched airplanes from smaller regional airplanes or bigger airplanes that were shrunk. We have learned a lot about the market with our previous programs. Embraer is a company that is now 30 years old, and we have learned a lot, and we have put all this knowledge in this new family.
If you're a large corporation, or Bill Gates, and you want the ultimate in business transportation, then a Gulfstream 5 will be on your shopping list. But it's not just pampered executives who need a Gulfstream.
Here at Farnborough, we're focusing on our military and government applications of this aircraft. Everything that makes this a superb platform for business aircraft, its range, its reliability, the cabin pressurization, the altitude at which it can fly at, the reliability that it has as a proven performer, all those attributes have tremendous applications in government and special mission areas.
The Gulfstream 5 will also keep you above other air travelers.
The airplane's maximum altitude is 51,000 feet. Fully loaded out, it will always go to 41,000 feet for an initial cruise altitude, and by the end of the flight you step climb yourself up to 51,000 feet, at which point it burns extremely low fuel flows. And that helps our range go over 14 hours, over 6,500 miles.
The latest version of the F-16 Fighting Falcon also displayed at the show, and certainly didn't perform like an aircraft that first flew over 2 decades ago.
It's a beautiful aircraft. I think back when this aircraft was first designed, which was a number of years ago, it was really a revolutionary design and a big risk by those not only in the Air Force to support it, but by the company engineers who designed it. But that risk really paid off dividends because it's been able to maintain its performance capability and right up there with the top line fighters all these years. Well, this is a great opportunity at Farnborough and other international air shows to be able to demonstrate to the customer the capability of the aircraft alongside the competition. It's a great opportunity for us and also for them to be able to compare side by side.
The first fifth-generation fighter to enter service is the Saab Gripen. Designed and built in Sweden, it's a true swing-roll fighter aircraft.
You have an aircraft with a lot of information and a very good man-machine interface. It's very easy to handle the aircraft, it's very easy to handle the system. You have a very high situation awareness together with the data link system. It's easy to fly. It's very low cost to operate the aircraft as well.
On the Gripen stand at the show was this cockpit demonstrator.
What you see, hopefully, is 3 big multifunction displays in colors, 6 x 8 inches. And if you start with the one to your right, this one in this is the radar. And you can see the different target here. The radar automatically detects and tracks target. I also have the same information, more or less, over the scenario on the tactical display in the center, where I have my data link information, where I see myself as a symbol, I see my friends as a symbol, I see how much fuel they have, I see how much armament they have, and also I automatically see what kind of target they select. On the left-hand display, I have some flight information as well as underneath information about the radar warning receiver. Up in front, I have an up-front controller where I can maneuver the radio, and other stuff. It's like a keyboard to the computer. It's up here, so it's easy for the pilot to fly and operate it at the same time. Of course, we have HOTAS, hands on throttle and stick, meaning that most of the functionalities I need for flying or to maneuver the weapon system or the radar I found here on the throttle and stick.
Gripen is competing for sales with Eurofighter Typhoon, but it has the advantage of already being in service. The display aircraft at the show was the latest export version. Export customers so far are South Africa and Hungary, although its low running costs will certainly mean more sales in the future. Next-generation fighters need next-generation weapons. Pan-European company MBDA were showing their latest technologies.
What we're doing here today, really, we're showing a range of products primarily to fit to the latest generation of fighter aircraft. Storm Shadow is a response initially to the UK's conventionally armed standoff missile requirement. We entered a contract for it in 1996 and are also supplying it under the name Scalp-EG to the French government and to some other European and export customers. It's a missile which essentially is launched from a fast jet. It descends to a low altitude. It flies following the terrain for quite some distance and avoiding known anti-aircraft threats. In its final phases, having navigated by GPS and INS, it does what we call a terminal bunt. It turns over, takes a look around for the target to make sure that it's in the right location, and then penetrates the target, detonates inside. Things like hardened aircraft shelters, maybe command and control buildings, or the sort of facilities where people would build perhaps biological, chemical weapons, those type of activities. ASRAAM is powered by a very fast rocket and is really designed for short-range combat. I mean, that's the name of it, the Advanced Short-Range Air-to-Air Missile. It's essentially when you've got planes merging in a dogfight, what some pilots refer to as the knife fight in the letterbox. Meteor is a very different type of weapon. The aim there is when you have a sophisticated radar, as you do on the Typhoon, and you can actually spot the enemy aircraft before you. That lets you get off what we call a no escape shot before he can actually he can see you and launch his own missiles. So that's more when you're penetrating defended territory for enemy aircraft.
The flying program on the trade days lasted just over 2 hours, but at the weekend this was extended to include classic aircraft and some spectacular aerobatic displays. Diana Britton showed off her skills in a CAP 232. One Russian aircraft that was at Farnborough was Angie Soper in a Yak 11. Another was a Sukhoi Su-31 flown by Brigitte de la Salle. One of 6 women pilots at the show was Anna Walker in this Booker Jungmann. Followed by Carolyn Grace in this immaculate 2-seat Spitfire T9. But it wasn't all women pilots. Alan Wade displayed this Slingsby Firefly T-67M for all 7 days of the show. But the ultimate in gravity-defying displays came from Xavier de Lapparent in this Sukhoi Su-26. The torque from the powerful engine gives him the ability to almost defy the laws of aerodynamics, as he does a very good impression of a helicopter. One of the highlights on display at Farnborough 2002 was the RAF's Tornado GR4.
This particular show's a real honour, in fact, to do. When I was a kid, I can remember Raymond Baxter and his commentary, and always wanted to go to Farnborough, and to actually display here is a real privilege.
The GR4 is the RAF's frontline strike attack aircraft. Navigator on the display aircraft is Flight Lieutenant Andrea McCall.
You know, I'm involved in operating all the weapon systems, so in effect I'm in charge of getting the crosshairs on the target. Although the pilots get the glory of actually pressing the button, then navigators do all the hard work.
The Tornado GR4 is an upgrade version of the GR1.
Well, I think when upgrade programs are initiated, they're initiated based on a review of the concept of operation. So if you go back to the initiation of the Tornado GR1 program, it was ostensibly conceived at the time of the Cold War when the idea was to go in as low as possible, so a low-level attack across the European plain. I think where we've had Gulf War, Kosovo, and basically a major change in determining what the threat will be over a period of time. So Cold War, very fixed threat, very long term. And that's had a radical sort of review of the military's concept of operation.
Well, the GR4's got a forward-looking infrared, which the panel is fairly visible underneath the nose of the aircraft, and that's really the only external difference you'll notice on it. But that gives us an excellent passive night capability, as well as the terrain-following radar that we've got as well. It also has an improved joystick on there with giving me HOTAS controls and an improved head-up display, also a multifunction display as well. The integration we've got now with laser-guided bombs and the thermal imaging and laser designator pod we have is coming together. So, but also it's capable of carrying dumb 1,000-pound bombs, cluster bombs, and future weapons such as Brimstone and Storm Shadow.
Only displaying for one day was the Boeing C-17 Globemaster, the ultimate military transport aircraft.
The C-17 is really the only airlifter of its kind in production today anywhere in the world, and it does both the strategic air mission as well as increasingly a tactical theater airdrop mission.
Many people were disappointed that it only flew once.
Well, normally the C-17 would have been here all week, but right now the commitments for the airplane abroad have been so great that what it did was it brought the Apaches here, stayed for one day to do its flight show, and then needed to leave actually to go do some sustaining missions, and it'll be back to pick up the Apaches.
The C-17 has a short field capability, so it can get into and out of airfields with very short runways. It's also recently been operating in the war against terrorism in Afghanistan. Currently, the RAF operate 4 Globemasters. A smaller and nimbler transport aircraft at Farnborough was this Alenia C-27J Spartan. Developed jointly by Lockheed Martin and Alenia Aerospace in Italy, the C-27J is a tactical transport designed for mid-size missions, payloads and budgets. A new transport aircraft, still in its early stages, attracting interest at the show, was this aircraft from Airbus Military.
This aircraft is the A400M, which is a military transport aircraft. It is an aircraft designed to fit precisely between the smaller C-130, which most people know about, and it is the aircraft that is in service with most of the European air forces, and the much bigger American C-17, which is primarily a strategic transport. This airplane is designed to bridge the gap between the two and fulfill both tactical and strategic roles. The aircraft is at the early design stage. We have a contract where the technical specification for the aircraft has been defined, and we await formal launch of the program later on this year, when we receive, hopefully, German parliamentary approval after the German elections.
One European aerospace collaboration about to enter service is the Eurofighter Typhoon. For the first time in public, 4 Typhoons, one from each of the partner countries, flew in formation at Farnborough. The first instrumented production aircraft, IPA-1, then landed to take part in a naming ceremony to officially mark the adoption of the name Typhoon. This was the first time the public have had a chance to see a Typhoon in RAF markings. The ceremony was attended by VIPs from the partner nations, but low cloud meant the formation nearly didn't happen. The skill of the pilots, however, meant there were smiles all round.
It's really exhilarating to be involved in product at this stage. The first production aeroplane with 3 development aeroplanes alongside me. That was quite exhilarating coming here, Farnborough.
The presence of the Secretary of State for Defence was testament to the importance of the occasion.
Yes, this is a very important event for the Eurofighter Consortium. We've got an opportunity to present the programme to international delegations from all over the world, I think over 40 scheduled to visit us during the course of the event. But I think importantly it's also relevant to the tens of thousands of aviation enthusiasts and taxpayers who contribute to programmes of this type. So for us it's a very important event indeed.
Export success is important to the future of Typhoon.
Well, we've been actively selling the aircraft for 2 or 3 years now. We're at a very important juncture as the aircraft enters service with the 4 launch customers. And we've recently had some very good news, and that is that the Austrian government has selected Eurofighter Typhoon for its next generation combat aircraft. That follows a recent decision by the Greek government, some 18 months ago in fact, to also work towards a contract for the product. So it's really giving the export programme a real boost.
Typhoon is also good for jobs.
If you take into account the airframe elements, the avionics systems, the engine components and so on, then some up to 50% of the product is sourced in the UK. In total, around 150,000 people are employed directly or indirectly in the programme in some 400 plus companies around Europe. So it is a very important part of the industrial base and gives real employment and some very tasty jobs and career prospects for many people.
Development of any new aircraft is highly complex.
There is a plan, obviously, and there is a specification that you have to meet. And the way you have to think about how you do it is you do it in little slices. All the prototypes are different and have different tasks. Like one is primarily concentrating on the engines, the brakes, the landing gear. Another airplane is concentrating on the radar, the avionics, and so on and so forth. So all the tasks are divided, and it's really not until you have the first production airplane that it all comes together for the first time. We are almost done with the tasks that we have been giving for what we call initial operating capability. That is the airplane with all its systems, It is the radar and it is the air-to-air weapons. The AMRAAM, the Sidewinder, and the ASRAAM. And the next step then is, to move into the air-to-ground capabilities that we have that we're in contract to deliver in 2005.
Well, in the modern battlefield, battle space, if you don't know what's going on around you, you're very poorly placed. So situational awareness is the buzzword that serves there. So we've done everything in designing the airplane from the cockpit out to give the pilot the information that he needs. When it's coming from all the different systems and sensors, be that the radar, be it data link information, be it infrared information, it's all brought on board the airplane, melded together before it's displayed to the pilot. So you've got in this cockpit some unparalleled situational awareness.
Typhoon's display at Farnborough was its most impressive yet.
We're fortunate now we've got to a stage with the flight control system where the airplane is effectively carefree, allowing me to fly the airplane as I want without having to worry about any of the limits. That translates into an air display that can show off most of the potential of the airplane. So I've, along with Chris, tried to develop a show that shows the agility of the airplane and also shows the performance of it. Where we can get slow, we can fly at high angles of attack, but we can also get fast very quickly. The ability to change our energy level is one of the keys to the capabilities of this airplane.
And Typhoon is still not running at full power.
Prototypes are what we call 84% load airplanes. So the production airplane will actually have 15% more performance than what we can show today. But even that said, we can still outmaneuver all the other airplanes that are here, even with that prototype airplane.
It's all the superlatives, all the corny phrases you would like. It really is the bee's knees to fly. Huge wing, huge amounts of thrust, so it gives you the agility and the performance you need in a modern airplane. Not just in the close-in dogfighting, but also up in the high-level supersonic. Because remember, the most important thing is the guy who gets highest and fastest first has the first opportunity to shoot.
A brand new aircraft on static display was this Pilatus PC-21.
Well, the aircraft is designed as a flying trainer. It is designed to satisfy a requirement that we see which moves away from specific pilot as handler to pilot as manager. So the aircraft, although is suitable for basic flying training, very suitable for basic flying training, is pitched in at the advanced flying training and some elements of fighter lead-in training as well, but with a focus and emphasis on mission management. It is a totally new design. The parts commonality between this aircraft and the modular trainer, the PC-9 or PC-7 Mark II, is minimal. It's an absolute clean sheet of paper design. The reception has been absolutely beyond our wildest dreams. I mean, the aircraft is the first new military development to fly this millennium, so it's attracted interest from enthusiasts, but also, of course, the potential client base of being able to sit in the aircraft. They've monitored the program, they've monitored what seem to be, to them, impossibly tight deadlines, but we've achieved them, and we've flown it here. The aircraft is functioning, and the advertisement that we're putting forward now is that we're ready.
Another next-generation trainer is a joint development between Lockheed Martin and Korean Aerospace Industries.
Our control surfaces in the back, the horizontal and vertical stabilizers.
It's got a very relevant modern cockpit. It has a very good wide performance envelope that makes the aircraft easy to transition into has a supersonic capability which gives it true lead-in fighter training capability. It makes it an ideal conversion airplane to fly before you get into your frontline fighters.
Through this program, we have established the capabilities of design, development, and the testing and delivery in a complete system of the aircraft system integration. So this is really brought up the level of technologies, the level of capabilities in Korea to the world standard level to today.
There was also another, more familiar jet trainer at the show.
This is a Hawk Mark 127 development aircraft, and it's unique in that it's the only development airplane we have for the Hawk. So we reconfigure it from time to time as new aircraft come along.
Training sortie, and as you can see there's quite advanced avionics in the cockpit here with 3 multi-function displays and a data entry panel to interface with the aircraft, hands-on throttle and stick control, so there's plenty of switches around, and a very nice head-up display. This is a huge modification from the original Hawk, and in bringing the avionics on in this way, the Hawk very much stands as a very good training aircraft, a training platform for the modern 4th and 5th generation fighter aircraft.
The Hawk is the RAF's primary jet trainer, as well as being the mount of the Red Arrows. At Farnborough 2002, Flight Lieutenant Tony Cann took the Harrier GR7 through its paces. Just over a week later, this particular aircraft had a problem during a display at Lowestoft and crashed into the sea. Fortunately, Tony Cann ejected and sustained only slight injuries. A full-size model of the aircraft that's due to replace the Harrier was on display in the Lockheed Martin Pavilion.
This is a Joint Strike Fighter, now referred to as the F-35, which represents a family of airplanes that's being developed for the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, and the Joint Harrier Fleet of the Royal Air Force, Royal Navy. This program and this invitation, so to speak, for allied countries to participate is a new model for the United States. Historically, we've developed the airplane and tested it and operated in our armed forces and then made it available for sale to other countries. This is the first time the U.S. has actually invited allied countries to participate in the engineering and the manufacturing of U.S. airplanes. The first deliveries of these airplanes from an operational perspective are scheduled in 2008. We actually will deliver 22 airplanes for the test program before that, we'll actually have our first flight in 2005. The UK gets their airplanes in 2011, the first of their airplanes, and they're going through a decision process right now to decide whether those airplanes will be the short takeoff, vertical landing type like our U.S. Marine Corps operate, or whether they'll be a larger airplane like our U.S. Navy operates.
Yes, beautiful. No problems at all.
The decision the government makes will impact on the type of aircraft carrier that's built from which these new aircraft will operate. Buying the US Navy version would mean that the 2 future carriers that are currently at the design stage would have to be much larger. We closed the show with a look forward. Aircraft in the future are being designed to operate without pilots.
And you're clear for the XL to 1.2.
UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, are entering service right now.
This is an RQ-1 Predator. It's used for reconnaissance and surveillance. We actually control it from the ground. It does not operate autonomously. We're in full control the entire time from a ground control station. We actually have a stick, a throttle, and a keyboard, along with a monitor showing us whichever camera view that we select. It also has a map showing us where we are operating. So we operate it just like a regular aircraft, except from the ground. We taxi, take off, and land with a view out the nose from a nose camera.
Northrop Grumman were showing a mock-up of one of their UAVs called Global Hawk. This is designed for reconnaissance missions at altitudes of 65,000 feet. The aircraft has a range of 13,500 nautical miles. Who knows? Farnborough 2004 could be the first airshow display without a pilot.